everybody, today we have Rep. Maxwell Frost on the podcast. Probably heard of him, first Gen Z member of Congress. Really interesting dude to talk to. I highly recommend this episode. We don't get into any politics. It's really just about who he is as a person and what he likes. So we talk about how he's a foodie, his favorite restaurants in his district, his favorite restaurants in DC, what he loves about coffee and coffee shops around here, and his love for music. His dad was a full-time musician, still is, and that is what got Maxwell interested in being a drummer and really learned all the percussion instruments. So we get into all this today. Such a cool episode, really good conversation. Tune in. Hello, everybody, and welcome to another episode of Capitol Spotlight. Today we have Congressman Maxwell Frost from Florida, Central Florida, on the podcast today. Congressman, thanks for being here.
Yeah, good to be here, man.
Well, so tell us a little bit about your district to get started. I like people to understand where people come from and who you're representing. So what is going on in Central Florida for you?
Well, I represent the coolest district in the country, obviously. I was born and raised in Orlando. I represent Central Florida, and my district is actually the result of packing and gerrymandering. So when you have gerrymandering going on, of course, there's districts that people are drawn out. But oftentimes when it's a very blue area, they have to create what's called a packed district.
Okay.
And so I am a packed district where they took the bluest parts of Val Deming's district at the time, District 10, and then Stephanie Murphy's district right next to it, and put them together to essentially eliminate a Democratic seat and create two Republican ones. So
Gotcha.
I'm the result of that. And so I have a very blue district in the heart of Orlando, with the center of it being downtown Orlando. Mm-hmm. So it's very densely populated. On a map, I probably have the smallest, if not one of the smallest districts in the state of Florida. So it's sad on the political side of things, but it's as a result, it's a really cool district because it has all the coolest parts of Central Florida,
for sure.
Including downtown Orlando, the heart of it, Lake Eola, but also outside of it, I have the University of Central Florida, the second biggest university in the entire country.
Wow.
Go Knights. Yep. We continue to go out east, out to an area called Bithlo, which is a very rural part of my district. They're not really connected to the infrastructure of the rest of the municipalities, and they have a lot of issues out there, but it's also a really beautiful area as well. Yeah. I spent a lot of time out there as well. If we keep going past downtown Orlando, we have all the Main Street districts as well. So if you're familiar with Orlando, the municipality really wanted to create other areas people could go hang out in would be walkable, have bars, restaurants, places you can go visit, live in. And so there's a lot of those areas, and each one of them has their own character. Yeah. So when I want to go out at night and get some drinks with some friends, we're picking one of those Main Street districts to go hang out at.
Like Tanqueray's, right?
Tanqueray. Yeah, that's downtown Orlando. Yep. That's in the kind of central business district. Yeah, okay. We've got the Milk District, which is kind of the new and upcoming place where you go to get some drinks.
Gotcha.
There's the Milk District, which is one of the neighborhoods of Orlando. Okay. So there's a ton of different areas to go hang out in, a lot of fun. If we keep going, I have West Orlando. So I have Pine Hills. I got Paramore, a lot of traditionally black and historically black areas as well. My district is very diverse, the truest sense of the word, right? Like I'm about a third white, a third black, a third Latino. Jeez. Very large Jewish population, very large Arab population, very large NHPI population as well. So it's a very diverse district, which is amazing because it's kind of reflective of my personal identity as well, which I'm sure we'll talk more about later. And not just that, but Orlando is just such a great music scene and art scene. I've been a part of the music scene there since I was in high school.
For sure.
Making bands. I went to an arts high school. Cool. Of course, we have Universal Studios, Universal Orlando. All the three theme parks are split up between three different districts.
Oh, really?
So I have that. Daniel Webster has, I believe he has SeaWorld. And Disney's with Darren Soto. Okay. But I have a lot of Disney workers, and so we have obviously a good relationship there. But we got the best roller coasters in the world in my district, Velocicoaster and Hagrid's. Really good multi-launch coaster. I'm a big theme park nerd. So anything from theme parks that everyone knows about to things that really make Orlando beautiful, like our local music scene, our art scene, our food and beverage scene. Last year there were multiple months where we had the fastest growing restaurant and bar scene in the country.
Jeez, okay.
So there's a lot of new things coming to Orlando. So I always tell because I went to art school, a lot of my best friends moved to LA and New York, right? And I always tell them, you got to come back and check it out. You know, I know you think it's lame because we were like freaking 17 and couldn't like go out. And we grew up in South Orlando, which is a very different area. But when you come to kind of the heart of the city and you get to spend time in a lot of these main street districts, a lot of historical areas, you really see a new beauty. And so really it was about 6 years ago that I really started living in what I'll call the new Orlando, different than what I grew up in South Orlando. And it felt like I moved to a new city I'd never been to before, besides knowing the people, knowing the culture. So
yeah, that's super cool. I mean, I feel like most people can associate some memory with your district because of like Universal Studios or going to Orlando growing up, something like that. So it's not an opportunity that a lot of people get where people that aren't from your district know your district well. So that's cool. As far as, so you have Rollins College, which is in Winter Park, and then you've got UCF, which is just so gigantic, huge. commuter population of people on campus. What is it like representing such a big congressional or like college inside a congressional district?
Yeah, we have Rollins, UCF, and then we have Valencia College, one of the biggest community colleges. Well, they have some four-year degrees now. It's one of the big colleges in the country as well. I actually went to Valencia. I was dual enrolled in high school and went there after. And it's amazing. I mean, I get to spend so much time with students. And I've really, you know, when I got to Congress, I really wanted to figure out how can I be in spaces that usually politicians don't go into because they're not seen as a valuable constituency in an election, or maybe they can't vote yet. So I actually spend a lot of time in elementary schools. I do a lot of like student town halls and like roundtables with like kids, like children. I'm on the college campus a lot. On my campaign side, I think I'm one of less than 5 members of Congress that on the campaign side run a year-round organizing program. So we never stop knocking doors. We hire 3 cohorts of young people every year to go out and register voters and connect with people. So we're on the UCF campus all the time.
That's great.
And in an era in Florida where a lot of higher education, a lot of administrators are scared to be involved in even nonpartisan politics, we're working at filling that gap on the campus of UCF, which used to be really good about it, and now they're not really good about it. Getting their own students registered to vote and out to vote is this kind of culture of fear. And we filled that gap. So a lot of students on campus, you know, recognize me and know me. You could go on my social media and see in the last days of the election, I was just on campus, like talking with young people, saying, "Hey, have you gotten to vote yet?" You know, and it's a really humbling experience. You know, having some like 18-year-old walk past me and say, "Don't talk to me," but a lot of them, you know, went out to vote, and I have a lot of students who come up to me and say, "Wow, you're on campus so much," and like, thank you for being in here, and I think it's really important. And we also try to bring cool people down to speak with them as well. You know, we brought Jamie Raskin down. We did a kind of symposium with him. I mean, he's a former college professor, so it was a perfect thing. And I have a really good relationship with the student government there. I mean, I see the student government UCF as valuable as a relationship as I have as the mayors of my municipalities. You know, they run a huge budget. And they really are a big governing body in my district, you know, believe it or not. And so I have official meetings with the student government from UCF very regularly, and really take their concerns at heart and see ways that we can work together.
That's great. And I'm sure it gives you such a unique perspective to be around younger people. Even at 27 years old, and I'm 28, it's like, we're still so young, but it's a different type of young for someone in college. You feel old when you go and communicate with them because they're thinking differently than us. So how does like staying in check with them and talking with them consistently help you bring that feedback back to Congress?
It's really helpful because oftentimes, you know, young people, their concerns aren't really heard or understood. Sometimes they're listened to, and like, you know, a lot of people have these kind of youth advisory councils in their office. I actually don't have one. And some people have asked me to make one, and you know, my thing with these kind of councils is unless you're prepared to really empower people on it, I don't want to say it's a waste of time. I mean, it's nice for some resumes, but you know, I like to take a step back and think of the macro sense. How do we make sure as many young people are heard as possible, not just like the 10 like, you know, student government, like political nerds, you know, getting something on their resume. And so, you know, for me, the programming that we do on a lot of the college campuses in my district, my town halls and roundtables I do at high schools all around the district and middle schools around the district and even elementary schools, those are more valuable ways to really understand where young people are at, what they're thinking about, and then also vice versa, be able to answer questions and help them out with things. And that's what we try to do. Also do as many opportunities as we can for them to be involved on the political side.
Yeah.
So, we have Democracy Summer, which was founded by Jamie Raskin. It's a campaign thing, but this past time we hired about 20 young people for the whole summer to teach them how to work on campaigns. I want to up it. Jamie has like 100 people every summer that I want to like get to his level.
For sure.
But these are the kind of things that we try to do, and it really helps me stay grounded in understanding the issues that are impacting young people. And sometimes it's things where I've had a lot of people come up to me, for instance, while I'm on campus and ask me, "What's your position?" I had a college Republican come up to me and say, "The college Democrats don't want to debate us. What's your position on that?" I'm like, "Dude, I don't have a position on this."
You're not the press secretary.
Yeah. I mean, not to make it feel small, but like I'm not gonna weigh in on that one. But they appreciate being able to talk to me anyway, and so I think that it's really helpful. I'll give you an example here. In the last few weeks of the campaign, because I was on campus, we had so many students come up to me and complain about the long lines to vote. People at our college campus were literally waiting 2 hours to 2 to 3 hours all day, every day to early vote. I'm not talking about, I'm not even talking about the day of, right? I'm talking about early vote, which the whole purpose of early voting is meant to be convenient and easy.
Yeah, skip the line.
Yeah, and so because of that, and because they told me about it, we were able to work with other local electeds and put some pressure on the supervisor to make it, to help add more lines, add more people and different things, and it did help. So, but we wouldn't have known that if we weren't on campus.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, that's great. There's so many directions I want to take this from there, but we'll stick with Orlando for 1 minute. We've heard you're a foodie, so we want to hear some food recommendations from Orlando and then from DC as well.
Okay.
I'll start with my personal favorite, Prado in Winter Park.
Prado, yeah.
It's just such a good Italian restaurant. Huge fan of that, but
Michelin Guide too.
Oh, really?
Yeah,
I didn't realize that.
Yeah, it's on the Michelin Guide. Prado's so good if you can get a freaking seat. It's but it's so good. I just took my girlfriend there a few weeks ago.
Nice. What else you got?
My favorite is called Edo Boy right now.
Okay.
So there's a bar in Orlando called Tori Tori, which is in the Milk District, and I think it's been rated like the top bar in Orlando. It's a izakaya, so you can go get some like really good food, skewers and stuff like that, but a really good bar as well. But the owner of that made a 8-person standing sushi bar behind it. And you like sign up for an hour slot.
Yeah.
And he based it off of, I went to Japan on a Codel actually like now 2 years ago. And if you go out to the docks in Japan, they have all these guys who have these little kiosk kind of things where it's like fresh fish, and at 3 a.m. you can go get some like pieces of nigiri. It's like super fresh and it's really good. And so he wanted to replicate that in Orlando. So it's an 8-person sushi bar. It's super chill, but it's like the best fish. So I love Edo Boy, and everyone there is super chill. So Edo Boy is really good. I love a place called Juju, which is like a izakaya, so Japanese like bar food. I'm pescatarian, so if there's a good fish option, like I'm gonna like it. And then we have so many good bars in Orlando too. One of my favorites called Sunroom, which is like has this like late 1960s vibe, and I discovered it when I started I was obsessed with Mad Men, so like I was like, it was like my perfect place to go to. I felt like I was Don Draper type stuff.
There you go.
And then I love Tori Tori as well. We have a lot of speakeasies are like a big thing nationwide now, and we have some really cool ones, but I like one called Hanson's Shoe Repair that you have to like say a code that you get online or on the phone or something. You go in, but it's chill. It's not over the top. Some of these speakeasies are like they're trying a little too they're trying a little too hard. This one's just kind of a bar, and it's really nice. Those are some restaurants. I love Prado. Prado's so good. During COVID, let me not say during COVID, during lockdown. I still want to find ways to go out and eat, and all these restaurants started like going on the streets doing outside stuff. And so along that strip, there's a place called Boca, and ABO, Atlantic Beer and Oyster, and I would go there with my friends, and we would do like a oyster brunch, where we just ate a bunch of oysters and like mimosas. Nice. Which I didn't have any work the next day, so it was like, but so we have such amazing food in Orlando, and that's one of my favorite things about the city.
Cool. So what are your spots in DC?
DC, okay. Before I say this, I want people to know I don't own a car. I don't have a driver. Or I don't have a staff driver, and I really stay on the hill.
For sure.
So I haven't really gone out there like that.
Okay.
But what I would say is one of my favorite group places is Barcelona Wine Bar. Now, it's one of the only tapas places I've ever been to that has a really solid seafood selection. They have like 4 or 5.
Their paella is very
good.
good.
The paella is really good. So I like that spot. I love Sushi Nakazawa, which is an omakase. And I love sushi, so that's one of my places. There's the buzzer.
Bound to happen at some point.
It's we're on the hill. What else do I like? I go to Call Your Mother a lot.
Fair enough.
It is it's one of the only options for me around where I live. And it is decent. It's good. We need more like breakfast. I need more places I can go get like a good breakfast sandwich at.
Fair enough.
On my way into work. And the only ones we have are like bagel breakfast spots, which is good. I like bagels, but like sometimes I want something that's not a bagel.
Yeah, for sure.
And I've had a hard time finding that unless you have it besides the Dunkin' here under Longworth.
No, I'm sorry, I don't have any good recommendations.
Yeah.
I would agree. Like I was gonna say Buffalo and Bergen, but also bagel.
I go to Buffalo and Bergen a lot.
Yeah.
I like them. That's right next to where I live.
Perfect.
But we need more. My girlfriend is a barista.
Okay.
And I'm a former barista. But she's like a coffee snob, and she hates coming to DC because she's like, there's no good coffee. Now she just started going. She likes Ebenezer's.
Yes, love Ebs,
and
for sure.
I'm glad she found something because it was like a lot. But now she found something. I realized it's a Christian place too.
Yeah.
Which makes sense because Ebenezer is a person from the Bible.
Right. It's like when you stack rocks on top of each other, like as a monument, it's called an Ebenezer. So I think that's where they got it from.
Oh, interesting.
It's National Community Church.
I have their coffee here. I have
that's
their
what
coffee
I have
here
at home too. It's so good.
It's so good.
Yeah.
So yeah, I like what's it, Ambar?
Yeah.
The Vulcan place.
Yeah, on 8th
I
Street.
like that's a good place.
All right, so we'll definitely go down the coffee route now. We have some coffee snobs on staff, including myself for sure. And my wife actually used to work at Ebenezer's. That's her first job in DC. So worked out well. But what are your coffee spots if you're gonna go somewhere?
Well, like if I'm going to, I don't really go and buy coffee anymore in DC because I have my Breville.
Right, let's talk about the
Bambino Plus. I got all my stuff. Like I'm good. I'm solid. You know what I mean?
You've got the Breville grinder, the knockbox. You've got a good.
I got the knock. You didn't even see. I got my tamper.
Yep. Okay.
I got like WDT tool. I got my pucks. I got a ton of shit or stuff. And what I do is I'm like obsessed with honey cinnamon lattes now.
Okay.
Yeah, I used to be a vanilla guy, but I went somewhere and got a honey cinnamon latte, and I like it a lot more because it's honey's a very kind of low key flavor profile, sweetens it
healthy
enough.
Sweetener.
Yeah, but it tastes really good, and I feel like it's better for my stomach. I got tummy problems, so I love a good honey cinnamon latte, and I make them here every morning. So I don't really go out anymore, but if I were to, Ebenezer's is kind of like on the way here for me, so I like going there.
For sure.
Shout out Cannon Coffee Cart.
Yeah.
I forget his name, but the owner's a really cool guy. I think they're getting another place in Rayburn.
Nice, that's great.
Like they're gonna have like a sit down coffee shop.
Okay.
There. So, I like the honey oat latte at Call Your Mother.
Okay.
I think they have a good latte there. I like that one. What else?
It changes once you have easy accessibility to good coffee in your home or in your office. You just don't go out as much.
Yeah, completely. Now at home I go out a lot for coffee, even though we have a really good setup because my girlfriend just likes to go. She's part of the barista community.
Yeah.
So she likes to go to other places. I'll go with her. So in Orlando we have Lineage, Easy Luck, which is where my girlfriend works. It's really good. We have Create, which is also like a photo studio. There's a lot of really good coffee shops. But none of them have like really good breakfast sandwiches.
Sad.
And I think that's the thing that New York has in a really good way that like the rest of the country needs to get on is like I go to other places and it's like you have coffee shops with like, if they have some food, it's like a little, you know what I mean? Like a pastry or something. And then you have breakfast places. I want to go somewhere and get my coffee and like a slap and like just such a really good breakfast sandwich.
Yeah, I feel you.
So That's a call to action.
All right.
To all the coffee shop owners,
but
all the coffee shop owners, just add some really good breakfast sandwiches. So I don't have to stop 2 places.
All right. So is that, at least when I think about what makes a good coffee shop for me, obviously good coffee, but I'm a vibe guy. I want to go in there and not feel like I'm just in another coffee shop, but there's something special about it. So I'm assuming food is on your list of what makes a good coffee shop for you, but what is it?
So I'm grading on a curb, right? Because there's not a lot of the really good food and coffee places. Yeah. But I would say, the vibe, like, the lighting is important. Yeah. If it's lit too like brightly, then I'm not about it. Music.
Okay.
If you have really good music going on, that's really good. I'm also very, I don't want to say I'm judgy, but I'm getting the honey latte, right? So if you go somewhere and you get a honey, and I always get iced. I'm not really a big hot guy unless I'm having a café con leche. If you're putting the honey in the cup and then pulling the shot and putting it in there and then putting the milk and you're not stirring it or mixing it, for me,
it's just going to be sucked.
I don't know if I can go back. Yeah, I don't know if I can go back. Because after the ice is in there, it's damn near impossible to mix the honey in there.
Yep.
So I really... And usually they charge you for the honey too. So I'm like, come on. So, but if I look at the barista and they're pulling the shot on the honey and they're melting it in there.
Yeah.
That's really...
You got to be paying attention to their technique.
Sometimes what I do, because it's like 50-50 depending on what they do, is I'll just ask up front. I'm like, do y'all mind melting the honey for me? And most of the time they do it.
But when they do it without asking, that's how you know.
That's how you know. I'm like, that's a pro. That's a pro.
For sure. All right. We can definitely bond over that for an entire episode, but I'll try to move on here. Tell us a little bit about your upbringing. It's a very unique one, and to find who you are today. So let's go down that route a little bit.
So I was born and raised in Orlando, Florida. My mother she just retired, is a public school educator. Nice. For 37 years, she taught special education.
Very cool.
And then my dad's a full-time musician. So I always grew up with music in the house. Yeah. We had a studio in the house, an at-home studio. And I'm also adopted. I was adopted at birth. So I grew up around, a family that didn't really look like me.
For sure.
And I wasn't the most well-behaved child. I wasn't bad. So when I was in trouble, it wasn't because I punched a kid or cursed someone out.
That's good.
But I was talking too much and trying to make people laugh and just doing stupid things.
Which I think, if you're gonna go down a route of getting in trouble, that's a good one.
That's the better one, than being a bad kid. Yeah. And so I was in detention all the time growing up. I was getting in trouble all the time. And really, I ended up going to the art school in Central Florida called the Osceola County School for the Arts. And I went there for middle school and high school. So you're there for 7 years, and you actually audition to go in, and you have a major, but it's a public art school. So it's a public school, but you just audition. And I was a band major there. And music has always been a huge part of my life because of my dad.
Yeah.
I grew up always knowing I wanted to be like him and play something.
Yeah.
And I didn't know what I wanted to play until one day my dad just got me a drum set for Christmas. Nice. I think he had just been observing me and how I interacted with different instruments, and he figured this was the one that probably I would like. But the drum set wasn't even the biggest thing he got me. The best thing he got me was the private lessons.
Yeah.
With the drum set. And that changed my life, and I became a drummer. And music has always been such a huge part of my life. And a lot of people don't know this, but before running for Congress, I used to work in music as well, working on music festivals. So I used to work for Coachella and different music and Stagecoach and different festivals like that. And then I also produced my own in Orlando, very small. But I was always into live events and music at the same time as I was working on political campaigns. So in between campaigns, I'd go work a music festival for a couple months.
It's a great way to balance out very different lifestyles too,
Different lifestyles, but a lot of transferable skills. I remember when I graduated high school, one of my best friends and I, we wanted to start a music festival. We were in Orlando. We were going to bring Chance the Rapper and Paramore to Central Florida. We're 18-year-olds. And we went, and we didn't know what the hell we were doing, but we were very ambitious, and we went door to door to different companies with an investor deck. We were like, can we speak to the owner? We have an investment opportunity. And one thing led to another, and we actually found a guy who was like, I'm down. We were like, we're going to be rich. It's going to be so sick. And he hired a guy to do the paperwork for this festival because we didn't know what we were doing.
Yeah.
And the guy's name is Ken Deans, who he's actually the third in command at Coachella. He's the logistics director, and he he had worked for Bill Clinton in the White House doing White House Advance. Okay. So he had like a political
and logistical
bend.
type of thing.
Yeah. And the whole festival went to crap. It didn't happen. But a few months later, I had just finished working a campaign. I get a call from him, and he's like, Max, you really impressed me while we're working on the thing, and my credentialing manager dropped out for Coachella and Stagecoach. Can you come out here next week and be out here for 2 months? And I was like, hell yeah. And that was really started my like professional events career because of him, because of that whole thing. So I've always been obsessed with projects, and I've always had like, for every one thing that was successful, I tried 30 things that just didn't happen. And it was the same way in high school, but being in band and then running for student government and all that really helped me move my energy from getting in trouble a lot to focusing on projects and like focusing on band and student government. And I was in this thing called Civil Air Patrol, which is like an Air Force program, and aviation, and I don't know, I always wanted to try different things.
I think getting over that fear of failure is so important too. Yeah. Being able to go out there and go, I don't care if this fails or succeeds. And like, obviously I want to succeed, but to just go try something new, and then it leads to the next thing that could be the success. And so it's cool to hear that story.
Yeah. I mean, that's been, and it's not just because of me, like every project or thing I tried to do, I always had like, my friends were always down to help out or be a part of it. Great. My family was always being supportive. So I always had people who supported me in all of it, which is why, the things that worked out, because of them. For sure. You can't do anything alone.
So tell me a little bit, so your dad's a full-time musician. What is his skill set there? What does he do?
Yeah. So my dad, he went to the Capital University, and then he went to University of Miami. He got his master's degree. He was part of the first graduating class for a degree called studio composition writing. Cool. So they learned how to write scores and like jingles and stuff. So early on, my dad wrote like the AAA jingle, like an old one that, and he played with Tiny Tim and just like random things like that. He used to tour for Disney. He plays the steel pan. Okay. But then he's also a multi-instrumentalist, so he plays trombone, piano, and then he's also like a studio engineer and producer. So he's done a lot of different things. When I was born, he decided to stay home and do more gigs at home. Nice. And so he ended up doing more like Disney and, just all the stuff Orlando has and playing and doing things like that. So yeah, that's what he does. Multi-instrumentalist. When I started making like bands in high school, he was our executive producer. He recorded our album and did all this stuff and would help us out. And he was an adjunct teacher at my high school for trombone and jazz performance. So my dad is the reason I'm into music. Love that. He's also, I remember the first time I ever cried to music. I think it was like 10, 11, or 12, like around there. And it's a song called The Swan, which is a solo piece played on cello. And we were watching this like HBO series, and it's called The Music in Me. I just learned, I completely forgot the name of it, and I was giving like a keynote to a music industry thing. And I was like, I forget the name of it. And this guy comes to me after. He's like, I produced that. It's called The Music in Me on HBO. And he sent me the link and stuff, and I got to watch it again. Cool. It was lost. But either way, it's kids playing instruments. And this kid was playing it, and I started crying. And I saw my dad had seen me, and I wiped my tears like, men don't cry. Like, I'm not crying. And I remember him saying, like, it's okay, like, to feel. And having that, like, validation from my father to cry, to art, was kind of a life-changing thing for me that in the moment I didn't think about. And as I grew older, I recognized how privileged I was. And I also recognized how privileged I was as like a person of color, because especially in Black communities and Latino communities, men are not encouraged to be vulnerable. And it's a problem that we have to confront. And so looking back at my childhood, I feel very privileged that not only was I allowed to feel, but I was encouraged to feel. Yeah. And then I was encouraged to create art to help others feel. And that's something, I don't take for granted. I feel very privileged to have had that experience. For sure. It's so cool to be a part of something that elicits this deeper emotion that you can't even like comprehend sometimes. But I love the power of music from that sense. Yeah. As far as
your musical abilities, what do you typically perform as a drummer? Like, what's your style, and then what's your style of music?
I play everything, and a big reason for that's my school is they kind of required you to learn everything and play everything. So as a percussionist, I couldn't just go. I was playing drum set, and I couldn't go in and just play in the jazz band. You also had to be in the concert band, and you had as a percussionist to learn every instrument in the percussion section. So I play everything: timpani, marimba, snare drum, bass drum, anvil, all like triangle. You learn how to be proficient in every instrument. And that's what I did for 7 years in school, and we're like highly competitive. We're going out and doing competitions and stuff. But my favorite thing was jazz band. I mean, that's where I felt at home, was playing with the big band. And then when I got into high school, started playing more like rock and making my own bands.
For sure.
And then I really got into Latin percussion, because there was one day in jazz band where our jazz band teacher came in and we played a salsa song, and he was like, all right, drummers, you're not going to play drum set, you're going to play congas and timbales. And he brought in a guy named Orlando Sanchez, which he's a really big Latin percussionist, and he came and did a master class with all the percussionists, and we all left like, we got to learn this stuff, like this is so cool, and we all got into it. So I started a salsa band called Seguro Que Si.
Very cool.
And I fell in love with salsa music so much,
Such a fun style.
I think like I want to write an essay on this when I at some point have time. But I've been thinking deeply about why I love that kind of music so much, and also why I love soca music and calypso and a lot of this just kind of Caribbean music. And I think a lot about the fact that I love like movements and organizing and like grassroots organizing, and I feel like there's a connection there, because salsa and soca and a lot of this Caribbean music is like the movement music. And what I mean by that is, in a rock band and in a jazz band, a lot of other bands, you have a drummer, and like I hold all the power, of the beat. I'm the drummer. But in salsa music, there's not one drummer. There's 5.
Yeah.
There's 4. There's 6. And each one of us gets like one part of that drum set, and that's our part. And it's not just up to me. It's up to a few of us to come together and play that one part. But together it creates the rhythm. So it's a shared power, which is what like movement is about. So I always say like salsa music is like the movement music, because it's really we really have to be in sync in a very special way. So I love salsa music, and this is a whole other story, but we actually played in Obama's inauguration by salsa band when I was like 15 years old. Very cool. That was a moment that kind of got me a little, I was like interested in politics more and more because of that. That whole thing was crazy. It was just my friends and I.
Very cool. So as a listener, as you intake music, what do you prefer to listen to?
I listen to everything. I used to say everything but country and EDM, but over the last like 8 years, I've gotten into country and EDM. So now I listen to everything. But I grew up listening to jazz, and it's funny. My dad had me listening to a lot of like John Coltrane, Miles Davis, Weather Report, like Jocko, Tower of Power. And then I also listened to a lot of like Beach Boys and Frank Zappa and like Stevie Wonder. So it was a lot of different things my dad I listened to. But I'm glad my dad showed me so much weird stuff and got me to like it early on. Because I think it helped me. My dad played a lot of Frank Zappa for us growing up, which some people listening are like, wait, what the hell? Like, there's some messed up stuff Frank Zappa says, but it's really like musical and like technical. But yeah, and then as I grew up, like I remember, because my mom's Cuban, my dad was born in Kansas, so I grew up in like the suburbs of Orlando. So there's like maybe typical parts of maybe like the experience from a person of color I didn't like experience growing up. And so I actually like my dad didn't show me like hip hop, right? And like I didn't get into rap or hip hop until like late in middle school, and it was like J. Cole, that like like 2014 Forest Hill Drive, that like I heard that album and I was like, wait, I like this stuff, and then I listened to like Nas had a newer album that had come out, and I listened to that album because one of my friends in jazz band showed me. This is like the point in jazz band where we were seeking more. We had played so much swing, and then we were like, all of us were getting into like hip hop, and we got into all this stuff at the same time. So then I got into hip hop, and a moment that changed my life was I got this internship at a music venue in Orlando when I was like 16 or 17. We got paid. I was like an intern doing production. I was a stagehand.
Cool.
And we got paid in beer and pizza, but I didn't drink beer, so I got paid in pizza.
Pizza works just fine.
Yeah. And one day we get a call to be at the venue at 9 a.m. They're like, you're going to be here from 9 a.m. to 2 a.m. I was like, all right, cool. We show up. There's a semi-truck, and it's Chance the Rapper Family Matters Tour. And we unload the truck and everything, and I'm like, there's instruments on this. And at the time, I had worked a lot of rap concerts, Earl Sweatshirt, all these different artists, and they never had bands. And this is when like rap artists really started leaning into having these bands, and they'd like pull a bunch of like gospel cats together, and it was really good. And I remember I set up the drum set for the drummer. His like nickname is Sticks, and I watched the whole show, and like seeing essentially a jazz band play with this hip hop artist, this rapper, changed my life. I was so into it. And I started like managing this local rapper, and I built a band for him, and I managed him for like maybe 5 years.
That's awesome.
And that opened up my mind to kind of, I don't know, I feel like a lot of times in music we have things like in compartments.
Yeah.
And that Chance concert really opened me up to like, I played in praise band like my whole life.
Very cool.
I grew up in church. And so I connected like the gospel and praise band to hip hop to jazz and all this stuff.
Which I think Chance does a lot too, you know?
Yeah, he did, yeah.
Yeah, very
it was cool to see.
Nice. So...
And obviously I love Paramore.
Yeah, you got to have that.
Yeah, and I have a lot of music here. This is Tower of Power.
We saw in your entryway you have a record swap as well. So that's very
people
cool.
can come in, they can leave a record, they can take a record. A lot of people come in and take stuff. We gave each person on our staff $20 to go and bring back some records.
Love that.
Yeah.
Good stuff. I know we have to let you run soon, so we might need to have a part 2 of this conversation where we go into more of your like political ideology or where you see the future of politics, because I want to hear that from you as well. But as far as who you are outside of politics right now, what else do you want the listener to know before we wrap up?
We talk a lot about music. We talk a lot about food. Those are 2 really big parts of my life. I'll tell you something that I've recently got into.
Okay.
I was like into sports a lot growing up as like in elementary school, because I was trying to figure out what I wanted to do.
For sure.
So I was in elementary school. I was on like a golf team for a while. Then I played soccer for a while, and then I was a gymnast.
Oh,
and
geez.
then I went to art school, and I kind of lost all of that.
Yeah.
I used to host Super Bowl halftime parties.
That's great.
So my friends would come over, and we wouldn't watch the game, and then during the halftime show, we'd all come together and watch the halftime show. But like maybe 2 years ago, I brought my dad to a football game called Florida Classic, which is FAMU and Bethune-Cookman, 2 HBCUs like play, and we really went to go see the halftime show. But I was like, you know what, Dad? My dad loves football. I was like, I'm gonna let you teach me a little bit about football. You know, he never got to do that. You know, because I was such an arts kid. So he was excited, and he kind of explained the game to me, and I caught on pretty quickly. And so by the end of the game, I'm like, let's go. You know what I mean? I was so into it. And we've been to a bunch of football games. Nice. So I'm actually recently got into football. Okay. Like, are you watching
Jaguars, Dolphins fan, anything like that?
I mean, I think like if I'm going to a game, there's a Florida team versus a non-Florida team, I'm going to be for the Florida team. Like we just went to the Pop-Tart Bowl.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, that was so sick. And
that is marketing genius.
Oh yeah. And we were on the field, and I was going crazy. We were going for UM. Obviously, my dad's an alumni, and he wore his like from the 80s or whenever he went there, the 70s. He wore his like varsity jacket that he brought from being in the band or whatever. And we had a great time. I love it. Yeah, I love football. It's a lot of fun, and it's kind of new to me though. But I'm always still watching for the bands, obviously.
There you go. Yeah, there's some great performances in college halftimes with the bands.
Oh yeah. It was good, but nothing beats that. I mean, you know, just the HBCU marching bands is just a different level. Yeah. You know what I mean? It's just unique. A completely different level. And I actually gave the award at the Battle of the Bands this year.
Oh, cool.
And it was so good. It's
so good. Instead of a favorite sports team, do you have a favorite like band of a team, you know?
I gotta be careful. There's a lot. This is like political now. But I will tell you this. The FAMU Marching 100 are they're just some of the best, right?
Okay.
Like when Beyonce did Baychella, like most of her band that she hired from were like FAMU alums,
cool.
right? From that. But I will say Bethune-Cookman's band is crazy good too. And of the 3 years I've been the Classic, I would give actually Bethune-Cookman 2 of those years. I think they did better on the band. Cool. So, but the Marching 100 are just so good, and there's so many other good bands too. Obviously, like Atlanta A&T, there's so many good bands. So I don't know. I used to be obsessed with DCI. Do you know what that is?
No.
DCI is like Major League Drumline.
Okay, all right.
So like they tour, they do battles and stuff
Good stuff.
that, and it's like the best marching band players. Like they join a DCI league. And it's like kind of sports, but for drumline.
Very cool.
And I used to be obsessed with the Blue Devils.
Okay.
So after this, you can YouTube Blue Devils and check it out.
YouTube is going to be a wealth of knowledge on this one.
Yeah,
So
Blue Devils. So they're sick.
Perfect. Well, we can wrap it there. Rep Maxwell Frost, thank you so much for the time.
Appreciate it. Thanks.
Hey, it's David again. Thank you guys for listening today. We're really excited about this Capital Spotlight podcast and getting it off the ground. So make sure to tune in again. And the easiest way to do that is subscribe to our channels. Check us out on social media at Connect App, CNCT, APP, basically everywhere. So find us there, subscribe to our newsletter, and check out our website, capitalconnect.com. Thanks, guys.